So,
Hello, guys. So we do welcome Mr. Sanjay Saini today, and let me give you a brief introduction about him. Sanjay, is an ex-Xerox, is an alum of Thapar University. He's got more than 20 years of experience, working across different industries. And right now, he also consults a number of startups, and he also consults a number of industries. He runs his own consulting firm. Plus, he also runs his own industry. So over to you, Sanjay, for the next round.
thank you, Rishi. And I guess we have audience here, and I was told most of them are from college, or the final year students. Would that be correct?
Yes.
Could you please type a quick
Yes, sir. Most of
yes?
them.
If
Yes.
that's true, just let's have a quick yes as why.
Yes.
Huh? What's the interactive platform here?
So they will be commenting here, but we have to wait for them to join because right now very less people are here. So
Fair enough. So let me know when to begin. If you are we waiting for them or should we begin?
no, we should start now, sir. We should not wait. Let's start. Yes, there are two. There are some people who have already joined us.
Okay. So largely, I'm in the industry. I was in the corporate for about 12 years, and then chose to be an entrepreneur. And I was an engineer. Then I've also been had my touch in IIM Calcutta, and largely this was a journey which I'll take you through later. Uh, what brings me here is more to do with as to how I could help you or anyone for that matter, and how I've been helping others in this. So, what I would say is, about 6 years back, well, I was in my own businesses. I was one of the IIT fresh pass out graduates who had his own startup, and he wanted me to evaluate his business. I mean, maybe because he also thought I'm an investor, which I am actually, and he wanted me to have a look at his business. So what he had done was he had a fantastic actually idea. He'd built an app and a platform around it, and he was conceiving to do take it forward into a business. So that's when I saw it. I liked the concept. I liked the idea because it was a little ahead of its time actually. And one of the but that was not all. What I realized was his knowledge and acumen about business in the real world was limited to his own innovation, what he had done. Businesses are not about that. Business is a complete 360-degree around, and your own innovation or your own solution to an existing problem is actually a part of it. While it's an important part of it, but it's still a part of it. The entire understanding of the entire business as a whole was something that obviously he was not aware of. So I like the guy. I mean, we got down talking, we got down sitting, and then we formulated a complete business plan, per se. That's when I realized that I need to meet up with these startup guys. See, most of you, let me share one thing here with you that most of you are, as I'm told, are in the final year of engineering and MBA, right? And at some point of time, you're going to be more, bulk of you would be taking up jobs. What I'm going to say is going to be very relevant in your context today. So perhaps I'm starting with an experience with the startup, but where it ends would make sense for you all also. So that's when I realized that let me have an interface with the people who are venturing into business, who are coming into business. And that's when I went back to my own college and to the entrepreneurial development cell there, and I checked up the heads there, the people running the EDC, as to how were the startups doing. And my fears were correct. Their knowledge of business and the world outside, and even securing funding, was limited to the creating their innovation. That's it. So the prototype they created, and they believed that this is good enough to do a business. See, this wasn't how businesses were carried out earlier. You know, if you were good in research, or if you were good in innovation, in the olden times, such people aspired to be a research scholar if they went into the academic world, or they would aspire to be a R&D head, research and development head, if they came in the commercial world. That's not the case today. Today, the founder expects to be the managing director of that business as well, and he wants to do that business for himself. Fair enough, but that chair of a managing director requires entirely different skills, and you put your whole life into learning a completely different skills. So either you put in a little time to understand that. And that's where I realized the gap between the academic learning and the industrial reality. And that's when I started helping people out. And that they need to understand the entire 360 degrees of the business, not just their innovation or their prototype or their solutions to the business. The solutions are actually correct to a problem, but whether they can be a commercially viable solution is something that has not been tested, that has not been experimented. That needs to be done. And the journey basically started this way, that my interface with the startup started. So what I was basically offering them was an understanding, the tools to look at a bird's eye view of the business from the top, the tools to penetrate into a business, because at the top you're different. I mean, you're basically looking at all aspects of the business: commercial, statutory, growth, everything. So your exposure is suddenly big, and you need to have a certain level of preparedness for that. Now, consider yourself, people who would be going into the jobs as well. You know, at one level, even you are going to be a businessman. At one level, you're also going to be conducting a business, perhaps on behalf of someone else. You know, it's a large corporate, which is still a commercial entity, which is still doing a business, and you're an integral part of it. While as a startup, you face a different thing. So when you get into this job, into your job, and when you begin your, you would largely enter into one of the functions or one of the departments, maybe sales, marketing, maybe purchase, maybe HR, choice. You would largely understand, realize that you would largely be which you call functional skills, so that related to the department, related to the direct work there. And while you learn this, you continue your function and you grow within the organization. As opposed to this, a startup largely who starts from the top, while you're beginning from the bottom and raising up, the startup actually starts from the top and looks at the organization as a whole from top to bottom. So he starts with enterprise skills. And those skills are relevant to the penetration of a business, to the and to understand the depth of a business. Any questions so far, if there are any? Fair enough. Then we'll continue with it. And largely, what are the challenges this startup faces? I mean, when he tries to understand the complete business as a whole. Could you one? I'm not able to see my own screen. Rishi, are you able to see my screen?
You are visible, sir. You are audible as well. You're visible as well as audible.
Okay. So here's the thing. If one were to why can't I'm not even sure whether being done.
You're audible, sir. You're audible.
Okay, fair enough if you say so. I mean, I'm just looking at a blank screen myself. So, yeah. So when I look up on this, when I look up at this with these startups, I went on in the journey with them, and that's Rishi. How many of the? Can you just come back? This is not turning out to be a good experience.
I came back, sir. Okay.
How many of the guests do we have? Do we really? Because
Right now, we just have 6 people with us, but most of them will be watching you after maybe, after we have done it. So,
my own screen is actually running blank here. So how am I going to share the screen?
okay. So, you want to share your screen, sir?
No, 1 second. Not at this point. There was a point where I had to do.
So, at the bottom, sir, there must be some options showing up, like share screen, leave studio.
No, I know, I got that. Yes, I got that.
So now we have got 10 people watching you. So it's increasing like slowly, slowly.
Mhm. Fair enough. So as I was saying, once you get in, you would largely be learning on the functional skills, right? Now what happens that lets you do your particular job well, and you grow with that. What happens when, as a functional, when you have a functional growth and you become a functional head? How do you aspire to be a CEO from there? You maybe you were an HR head and you did very well there, but how do you aspire to be a CEO there from there? Because CEO was one person who was actually looking at all the functions. So this is exactly what where I help. Basically, I conduct a workshop on the skills of a managing director. See, the role, and this largely encompasses the total depth of how a CEO looks at all the functions, right? Irrespective which industry, it doesn't matter. There is a common, you're talking about pharmaceutical, engineering, hospitality, maybe any industry that you can think of. That doesn't matter because there is a certain commonality of businesses at the top. So an exposure there helps you see a very large canvas, and you see yourself as a part of the whole. That seeing the whole is extremely important. It helps you. It's something like if you were to run a race, a 200-meter dash. It's easier running on a level ground where you can see the start and you can see the end, and you can mentally, place your space and the distance, and you would do better. But what if you were to run in a forest? You have no idea of the obstacles that would be there. You have no idea of the end of it. And so there is a comfort that when you see the whole, the larger platform, the larger canvas, you are better fixed at arriving well at the race. Similarly, even in careers, if you are aware as to how do you reach the top, it makes your job easier, right? And the expectations are aligned. Now, as you move up the top, who do you think you're going to be interacting with? The board of directors. You're getting closer to them, right? So at one level, you have to understand and learn how the board thinks, how the board functions. And once we understand that, then we clearly are aligned with their thought process. And this is exactly what I do in my workshop. Now, what exactly is this workshop? We're not talking about soft skills or the leadership skills. We're talking about hard, tangible tools. Tools that allow you to penetrate the depth of an organization. An unknown organization, doesn't matter. I mean, it's something that we do case studies where we sit in a room and, in a conference room, and based on certain input reports and some papers, for 48 hours, we sit and we analyze those and we realize as to what this organization was. If it was a manufacturing unit, what did they manufacture? What was the floor area? What was the industrial shed size? What machines they used? What was the rated power of those machines? What was the productivity of the machines? What was the productivity of the workers? What products they made? What was the price of the product? Who were the customers? How distant and far were the customers? Almost everything you get to know about an entirely unknown organization. This is exactly how Mr. Ratan Tata runs his Jamshedpur plant sitting in Bombay, right? That's the idea that businesses have to come to a certain rhythm. Now, I wish this session was a little more interactive because there were a few questions that I had in mind. So when you look at business, for example, or when you look at a corporate business, or when you look at your own business, right? What do you think is the most important department and the most important function in a business? What comes to your mind? I needed answers on that, but okay. So since the interaction is going to be limited here. So I think for any business, the most important thing that comes across is what you make, what you sell, the money you collect, and how you utilize that money. Largely what we are talking about is operations. Operations continue to be the most important thing in any business, a most important function in any business, and there's no denying that. Everything else in terms of HR, in terms of finance, in terms of IT, in terms of legal, in terms of sales, marketing, is a support to the main core activity, which is the operations. Now, as you grow, you would also realize in the jobs, for example, or even if you were a startup, you would realize that besides your own learnings in the institutes that you have had, now you are also challenged on a few other abilities, your organizational abilities and your creative abilities. And they would run tandem throughout your life, right? So to understand the organizational abilities and creative abilities, let's just understand in industry, there is a thing, the term that you would hear a lot, which is the process. So, and skills. So what exactly are we saying? What is a process and what is a skill? So here's the thing. If an activity can be well defined, right? It has specifications and you know how to conduct it. So you largely mapped a particular activity and you created a process. Right? Whereas skill is something which is still gray. It has parts of processes and it says starts off parts of your own skill. Can a skill be monetized? Little difficult. Can a process be monetized? Yes. Can a process be scaled up? Yes. So look at, for example, a restaurant here, right? Cooking is a skill. But the moment you convert it into a recipe and you formulated a process there. Now what is possible? Now 40 chefs can make that dish. You can scale it up, you can monetize it. This is something that you have to understand in the real corporate world also. Corporates favor processes to skills. And even if there are certain skills, one would assume one would assume that there has to be an intellect that brought in that converts a skill into a process, a well-defined specification laid out. That helps to scale it up, that helps to monetize it up. Now, why I refer to this process and skills is when you enter, you would realize that the bulk of processes and the bulk of MIS largely would be in three areas: in the operations, finance, statutory levies. Operations, I just shared with you what exactly it is. Finance would have its own financial reports involved, and statutory levies would largely be labor laws, the provident fund, ESIs, superannuation, gratuity on one end, then indirect taxes in terms of GST, then direct taxes in terms of income tax, tax collected at source, tax deducted at source, right? And if you're into export and import, then customs, circumventing duties. The knowledge of this largely is essential. The three put together largely cover a very large part of the MIS of a organization. Right? Now, this process-driven activity is largely here. The others also have processes, like for example, HR, right? Or for example, legal. They would have their own process as well, but there is also a large amount of creative skill required there. So this will run in tandem, the processes and the skills. Now, why I refer to the processes, this skills of a managing director, the workshop that I do to help people out, exactly shares those tools, those processes that help you move down. Now, who are exactly the beneficiaries of this process? A, clearly a startup, a person who's investing his time, money, effort, energy into it and doesn't want to go doom. Understand one thing about businesses, you need 100 things going right and falling in place for the venture to succeed. You just need two variables to fall apart and the whole business falls apart. So this whole concept, sometimes when people get into a startup of businesses, they understand 70 to 80% of the business and they say ki kiya ja sakta hai yaar, let's just move forward, let's just no, it doesn't work like that. You really have to know the depth of the business. These tools that we share have depth. They're not they're not rocket science. 6 million people in the country anyway know about these tools. Maybe as freshers you do not know, but there are many who know about this. They apply these tools differently. We apply it differently. As I said, I rate operations as one of the most important functions in a business. So we use these tools to delve deep into operations of any unknown company, hospitality, pharmaceutical, engineering, shipping, chemical, process industry. I don't care. The commonality of the business there stands the same. The penetration is possible. And who else benefits? Any existing CEO of an organization would find it easier to operate and function on various departments, on functions. The head of sales, marketing, finance, EDP, legal, R&D, everybody is reporting to him and he needs to know. Now, is he an expert in all of these? No. The R&D head, who is an IT engineer, actually knows the job better than the CEO himself. Right? The IIM MBA pass out, who's heading the marketing, perhaps does the job better than the CEO for that function. So apparently the skills of a CEO are very, very different from a functional skill. So this is something what we call as enterprise skills, as opposed to the functional skills that you learn when you join an organization and begin to move up the ladder within a function. Who are the other beneficiaries? people in the job, people in various layers of the corporate. They aspire to be closer to the CEO, to the managing director, to the board. So they would at any way need to know as to how the board thinks, how the board functions mentally, and how it travels down. Who are the others who would benefit? People who need to scale up. And Indians are largely intelligent. I mean, tell anybody, give the resources to anybody and ask them to start a business, they may be able to. An illiterate in Chandni Chowk runs his father's shop very, very well. He's good. But ask him that your business is successful, now scale it up from 1 to 40. That's where he begins to sweat. That's where he is not. So as long as it was confined to a limited business, manageable, and he could do it. So it applies to all of us. If we were to do a small activity, we are pretty confident that we will be able to do it. Our common sense allows us to reach to certain point. But if it were to be scaled up, then there is a process, then there is a tool, then there is a way and methodology of doing it. Then there is no abstractness to it. So you got to do it through a certain methodology. These tools help you do that, to understand how you do that. Who are the other beneficiaries? Let's say purchase, vendor development. Interestingly, if you're in an organization and you have a product to sell, it's priced at about, let's say, 200 rupees for that unit. How did you arrive at that price? Now, there is an entire engineering behind how you arrived at that 200 rupees price, right? There are costs attached to it. There is a profit attached to it. There's an aspect, everything that put together. There's an engineering science where you arrive at a price. Now, compare this with when the purchase executive or the vendor development sources some raw material or consumables from the market outside. What is his exact approach of buying a component for his own use? He would draw up his technical specifications. He would float them in the market. He will have 4 bids and would pick the cheapest. Right? Whichever meets all the technical specifications, and thereafter it's the cheapest. Why did he choose this process? Because this is all he has access to right now. But fundamentally, was this how he priced his own component? No, that's not how he priced his own component. So how is he accepting that a component that he is buying for, let's say, 40 rupees really values at 40 rupees? That's because he does not have the ability to delve deep into the vendor's business and to figure out as to what price would it be. Vendor management teams in automotive sectors are very, very good at it. You should see how they do it. As I said, these tools are not something which are rocket science. It's just that few people are unaware, and there are other 6 million people who actually are using it in the real world outside. So Maruti Udyog, for example, if you were to go to the vendor development, look at the components. A component that Maruti buys from the vendor for 100 rupees actually sells for about 1500 rupees in the replacement market. How does Maruti manage to pull it down so much? Because they understand the vendor's business. How do you penetrate that business are the tools that we are talking about. Who else is the beneficiary of this? An investor. Now, for example, if you were a startup and you were looking for an investment, your investor would largely be moving towards an unknown business. It's a completely unknown business. But he has learned the skills, the tools, the processes to delve deep into an unknown business. While you know it or not, he knows it. So in all need, the startup needs to know. He actually needs to know how his investor is going to meet up with him. How deep would he go? What questions are you? So you got to be on the same wavelength, right? That's where it helps. It helps the internal auditors, the operational auditors, the financial auditors to understand an entirely unknown business. And that's exactly what we do. We use the tools, we let you see a new business. You're not aware about that business, what is coming your way. And at the end of it, you know everything about the business. So it's not really a compulsion that you will understand the business by standing on the shop floor of the business. No. Knowing a business is a different ballgame. Largely, this was it. Any questions from here? Fair enough. I would take it up. If
I've
you have
got
a
some
question,
questions.
Rishi.
Questions
Yeah,
coming
Rishi.
from sir. So Sarab is asking, how can a final year student make a good startup?
How can a final year student make a good startup? That's a pretty broad question and a little vague. See, your basic startup will come from your passion, your knowledge, right? So you would have learned certain skills. You in the if you're an engineering student or if you're in the MBA, if you're doing your MBA, during your learning processes, learnings in the schools and colleges, you would have learned certain skills. Now, what happens in real life is you see a real life problem, and you realize that your learnings have an application, and you find solutions to that. These are your own passions. No one triggers you there. No one directs you there. So you find a solution to the existing problem in the real world and you create it. So that start has to be your own. What you start, where you start. People have done it in agricultural sectors, people have done it in education sectors. That was their passion. What I come and help forward, where the industry comes to help for and help you there is कि merely your finding your solutions for a problem is not business holistically. That's where you have to understand how this can really be viewed as a commercially viable solution or no. So that's the answer to your question is how you start a startup has to be your passion first.
Yes, sir. So we have got a second question from Vapul. He's asking like, sir, how successful is the Startup India program on the ground implementation as per your observations?
Ah, okay. See, understand, let me put it this way. As I actually, a part of that answer I'd already given. Businesses are tough. Let me clearly tell you this. Businesses are tough. You got to do 100 things correct, and they will, and then you have a successful venture. You just need to have two things going wrong, and the whole thing falls apart. So, largely, yes, it's not easy. If there are 100 startups, maybe one or maybe not even that would see the light of the day, would see themselves as successful. But there is no broad answer to this. There's no general answer to it. Every single project we evaluate, see its market and see its merit, and then decide, okay, fair enough, this should move forward. This should be backed by resources, financial or mentoring resources. But largely the project itself will tell us whether where would it stand, whether it would see the light of the day or would it not. But bulk of the businesses, startups, yes, do find it difficult to sail through.
And so why is it so? Like, why do startups find it difficult? Some reasons for their for this?
Not one, there are many actually. The startup. See, you got to understand the startup begins with their understanding and knowledge of their learnings, right? So if there is a computer science engineer, he is capable, he knows and he is capable of building a platform which serves as a solution for, let's say, like for example, there was some, if you were to take an example of Make My Trip or Mr. Deep Kalra, right? So he was capable of building a platform which was quite a solution for the travel sector, right? Now that worked, and then it was also scalable. It was a scalable model, and it worked. So the point what I'm leading is that the solution that you create is truly a solution maybe to an existing problem. But whether it is scalable, whether it is commercially viable, whether there would be a market for it, is something that we evaluate on an individual project basis. I mean, there is no hard and fast this the definition to it that every startup would see a good market. No, maybe or maybe not. So the kind
Well,
of challenges
some
they face are hundreds. I mean, as I said, one is their whole complete understanding of the commercial business as a whole, what was needed to keep the project successful. That awareness itself can be a limiting issue, or resources can be a limiting issue. They did not get the funding at the proper times. That's genuinely a big constraint. Yeah, you were asking something.
so I've got another question. After that, I will ask my question. I've got a
Aha.
question from Kuldeep Singh. He tells that how do you
How do you
manage all
manage
departments
your
if you're doing it?
Nice. So the Mr. Kuldeep definitely does needs to attend the workshop. Yes, Kuldeep, this is exactly what we take up in the workshop. It's has its own depth. It has a structure. It has a process to it. This is not the forum where I'm taking it in depth, but there is a large depth to it. It's a very tangible process. We're not talking about anything which is builds an aura. It's a very, very tangible process. Once you move through it, you will realize how do I, okay, remind me this. Okay. When we take you through the process, we'll do an exercise where you would actually look at a maybe a, let's say a manufacturing unit, and you would be able to calculate what are the machines and how much power it consumes, each machine how much power it consumes, and what would be the electricity bill of this organization even before it has started. And you've not even seen anything in the, you not even know the product of it. Wait a while, the whole workshop is actually all about that itself.
Yes, sir. So
For
I've
you,
got a
I will have
question.
a
Right?
very, for Kuldeep, I'll have a very, very tangible answer in the workshop. Yeah, what's your question, Rishi?
So my question is sometimes uh, a very good product, which can actually meet a lot of unmet needs which are there inside the market, but it actually falls flat. It doesn't do well inside the market. So what seems to be the reason for that, sir? Like many a times.
How do you say that? Uh, Bring it as a case study, I would be able to answer it better. I mean, what product did you have in mind? You see, like for example, during the pandemic when it started, many thought making masks is a very good idea, and everybody ventured into it, right? Now, that's a kind of a little knee-jerk thing. There is a market for it right now. There's a need for it. There's a market for it, but you got to do a better study, a sustainable study. I mean, the business has to sustain for the next 40 years, 50 years. How would what product would you pick? And what you really claim as there was a very good product and it fell flat, that good tells me nothing. I mean, that's a very arbitrary term. Uh, I would really need to know how did you call it good. So when there's a case study, for example, of a product, it's easier. It's to go threadbare into it and see whether that market is actual, whether the product has a market or doesn't have a market, or is it a sustainable business or it is not a sustainable business. But each would be a case study.
But for
Generics.
many
Yeah.
Many a times, the companies who would have built a good product, considering the fact that they would have done an initial study of, the customers who actually needed the product, but could not hit the right marketing channels to reach to the customers. So
So
that is
yeah,
where, yeah.
correct. So what's your question? So why did they
So
fail in
question.
that product?
Yes. So sometimes what happens is that, sir, the product is very good, but the marketing channels, the companies are not able to identify which marketing channels to focus upon. So how do you think the company should go about, especially as far as the marketing of the product is concerned?
See, it's not alone about marketing. You got to map the whole process through your mind and on the drawing board. So how you go to make this product reach the market. Now, let's just randomly start picking up what could be the possible causes of failure of a product, right? One, it wasn't even marketed well. So the basic awareness about this new launched product is not even there with the consumers. Right? Two, it was marketed very well, it was launched very well, there is a general awareness, the market is actually waiting for the product, but the company completely goofed up on its distribution channels. So whereas it was to go to a retailer, it was meant to go to the distributor, retailers, and to the stockists, it did not. Three, consider the distribution network is well placed, the marketing was done very well. Suddenly, they were not even ready to for such a scaled up production. I mean, they did not even believe, they did not have a conceived, they did not conceive the idea that they would need so much of volumes that the market response would be so good. So I'm saying when I said this statement, this was a broad statement, but actually it's accurate. You need 100 business variables to fall correct for the business venture to succeed. You just need two of them to fall apart and the whole business falls apart. So here, if there was a market developed, if there was a well-defined marketing strategy, and if there was the retailers, stockists network which was well established, but what if the production could not match up? So if even one business variable fails in the whole chain, the whole business, the product goes kaput. So your question perhaps was what are the possible reasons for a failure of a product launch or a new product being going into the market? Many, believe me, right from the concept stage to its trial stage to a formulation, if it's a pharmaceutical to its trials, to everything. I mean, today look at the pandemic, the vaccine that we are looking at, right? It has a process to it.
Right.
It has its market is ready. We are all waiting for the vaccine, right? We are, and it has a distribution channel which is ready. There is a pharmaceutical whole segment, layers of segment which were ready to. But at this point of time, it's not able to capitalize the market only because it's not there. The product is not even well developed so far. Many reasons,
Yes.
Rishi. Many, many.
Yes. And so we've got another question from Parmish coming up. Sir, which points should be kept at priority when talking to investors about a startup?
Nice, good question. What points should be kept? You should know your business very, very, very well. The depth of it completely. Uh, See, business. I always say this: businesses are not difficult. They have depth. They have depth. They don't have difficulties. They have overwhelming depths. I agree, but they are easy. They are easy to understand if you're willing to travel the depths. So when you are with your investor, if you know about your business, right? If you can speak about your business well and the depth of it, I think it begins to make sense. You may or may not have all the answers, but if you could deliver that sense that yes, you can turn around for an answer very, very soon, even then it's fine. So my one, if you were to ask me, your understanding of your own business pitches you
Yes.
well against an investor well, your markets, everything. So if you can preempt what questions he will ask in terms of market, in terms of scalability, in terms of profitability, you are ready largely. But we will do that. The depth of it is something that what we take up in the workshop, right? So once you are exposed to the depth of what is offered in the workshop, you would anyway know. And you would have a very, believe me, I can assure you, you'll have a very confident face facing the investor after that. I mean, that would really not be a challenge for you after that.
Yeah. Uh, Sir, any advices to the youngsters who are in, especially in their final and pre-final year?
You see, when you step into the real world, even while you make a mistake, the life is going to offer you opportunities again and again and again. Endeavor one, make it an endeavor to do it right the first time and every time. If you're doing your own business, not doing it right the first time and every time has a price, has a cost. You will make losses, you will lose out money, you will lose out people. If you're in a job, you're relatively cushioned, and if you make mistakes, maybe you will learn. But I am not a big fan of that whole school of thought which says we are human beings, and humans beings make mistakes. Doesn't matter. Let's move from there. No, that could be avoided. You see, the businesses are ruthless. They punish you when you make mistakes. Clearly, they punish you. So taking comfort in the fact that I'm a human being, mistakes hoga hi hoga. Well, you will learn it the hard way. So my one suggestion to the freshers would be build it in your character as fast as possible to do things right the first time and every time. It's important.
Right.
Any more questions?
That was so inspiring, sir, actually. But sir, what about those startup entrepreneurs, especially somebody like Kunal Shah, who actually succeeded after 4 or maybe 3, 3 or 4, I'm not sure, failed startups. So he already had 3 failed startups before this cred came into existence, and it's kind of very successful.
That's
So
quite a
what?
character, I'll tell you. I mean, that's really commendable if you failed 3, 4 times and yet you realize it. So there are two ways to look at it in terms of the soft skills of the person, of the gentleman, Kunal, and in terms of his learning curve as a business. So on the content side, as I see, his failures made him realize and understand as to what business should he be in, right?
Right.
Or what product or what service the market is valuing. His failures also indicate that his assumptions that this was a correct product, it should not have gone flat, were wrong. No, the markets don't behave the way you think. You got to actually travel from the market back and then see whether there is a need of this product in the market or not. Not because it came in your mind and then you travel into the market, because that's one mistake the startups do. They find a solution, they create a platform, and they believe that it has a need in the market, right? Whereas there could be a complete disruption to it. And the other side, yes, that's a very powerful character, I would say. A gentleman who falls 4 times and then gets up needs a lot of courage, a lot of guts. But I believe then he had it in him. I mean, he
Yes.
was a true leader in a way.
Yes, and many people say, even if you see, most of the times, Mr. Kalam also talks about managing failures is so much important in life, right? He always used to tell this fact to all the students, all the kids over there, that try to do the thing right in the first time. But even if you fail, take that as teachings, and don't quit till the time you
Yes.
actually reach success.
Yeah. See, so what happens is you look at the difference between a person who's rising through the ranks in a corporate world, right? And he will become a CEO one day. Let's say he starts at the age of 25, and maybe by the in 20 years, at the age of 45, he would become a CEO. He's aspiring to be a CEO, and let's say he's competent enough to become a CEO by then. Now, compare this with a startup who is a CEO from day one, right? Both of them, if they are do not have a familiarity with the business and they are young, let's say their founder is also 25 years of age and the person in the job, both of them will make mistakes. But the person in the job is cushioned. I mean, so he can afford to make more mistakes because not much is lost there. Whereas here, there's a lot lost, right? And it can actually break his spine also, break his whole business. Mistakes on this side. So yes, you learn from your mistakes, and you are lucky if you have the luxury that you can learn from your mistakes and yet stand up and survive. Because sometimes the mistakes can be very fatal. But there is a flip side to it also. Whenever a mistake happens, it's important that you learn from it. That what was the level of unpreparedness that I went into? And this is something that I emphasize because businesses are ruthless. They will not forgive you. I mean, Mr. Kalam will. He has a very soft heart. He had a very soft heart. Human beings would forget you. Businesses will not forget. When I say business, the nature of the market I'm saying, I'm not talking about an individual. An individual may still have a compassion for you or a fondness for you, but the markets will not forgive you for that. So you have to have a certain level of preparedness, and that preparedness is concrete, tangible. Yes, the exposure to the workshop that I was talking about, it's like it'll unlock your mind. It unlocks the mind as to how the businesses are looked at. So it's something I usually ask my question to my people who do business. I ask them a very question which they find it difficult to comprehend, and I ask them, how do you start your day? I mean, when you get up from your bed, what do you when you have to go to the office? How do you start thinking? Okay, what do I have to do first? What do I do first, and what do I do next? So the comprehension of that comes difficult to them, right? As a part of a case study in the workshop, this is something that we are going to address. That there is a CEO from a beverage industry who joins as a CEO of a computer peripheral industry. He spent about 30 years in the beverage industry, and now he's picked up as a CEO of the computer peripheral industry. How would he start his day? Period. That's it. One line. Now, any one of you who is actually from a premium MBA institute would know that this is a case study in the premium institutes. No big size, but it's actually unlocks your mind in a way. So the case study ends only at one thought, that he has to begin his next day. Where will he start the work from? Period. He has everyone, all sales, marketing, EDP, and production, research and development, exports. Where does he start from? And he's come into a product where he has no knowledge. Someone has a question. Would it be wise decision to have a startup just after completing PGDM or wait to gain some more experiences? Oh, lovely question, Nupur. Nice. So, Nupur, the answer to your question is that you should look up on Google on successful startups. That what is the age when the startups have been most successful? And you would realize that people who've had the highest number of startups, successful startups, have been people who have started in the age bracket of 40 to 55. Right? Next in that were those who started in between 35 to 45. And beyond 55, the energies, everything matters. So maybe they're also their success. So because their thinking processes are very crystal clear. The largest issues or lesser successes have been with the younger lot. Now, the being young as a founder offers you an advantage that you have the energy, you can really, give it a head start. But specific answer to your question is, that yes, if you have experiences and then you have a startup, it makes more sense. Yes. And you could even look up this on the, maybe look at Google, you will know. How should we prepare to ensure that we do things correctly in the first attempt? Nice. So, how do you do things the right the first time? Right? You're going to have to know the thing. So, that's it. All your life, you have to endeavor to know what you see. One of the, I would be helping you in a small way to unlock your mind on certain business processes, right? That is a tangible help. That's a hard bit rhythm. I'm not talking about soft skills of leadership. I'm not talking about how a leader needs to, how a CEO needs to be a visionary, or how a CEO needs to be risk taking, or what kind of compassionate leadership skills he has. No, we're talking about how does a CEO understand the hard bit rhythm of an organization, right? And to that, uh, I'll need your question again. I'm sorry, it slipped my mind.
So the
Can you repeat on?
yes,
Yeah. So the only way you can do things right in the first attempt is that you got to build your knowledge around it. So as I said, this workshop would help you in one way, but that's just one. All your life there would be a lot of things. So you've got to learn the depth of all businesses. See, understand one thing. I've not been a big fan of people who change jobs, right? So what happens? You spent about 3 years, let's say, as a assistant manager, and you just look for a, and assuming you were in sales function, right? So, and you were a damn good salesman. You were a blue-eyed salesman. Now you want to be a sales manager. That's an entirely different job. Those skills are totally different. I mean, being a salesman and being a businessman are two different things. The sales manager is, do you have that managerial acumen? Have you prepared yourself for it? That's it. So, if you were to be put on that position, you got to do things right the first time. You got to learn it. So, there is a lot to learn where you sit. Believe me, there's a lot of depth in the processes around you only. Only thing is, yes, we are not able to identify them, which is why I keep referring to the workshop that I do. I keep referring it as it unlocks minds of the people in terms of they get to see a way of doing things, the way of learning to do things. Maybe that's the little help that I do, but answer a very specific answer to your question is that you got to learn it, and you'll have to find ways to learn it. And that's what you do. I mean, it's easier said than done, of course. Well, you are likely to go, people are going to be making mistakes. I mean, it's not that you will do it right every time, but let's have a tendency to doing it right the first time and every time. Okay.
sir, having a great mentor, also may help us do things right in the first time. What do you think,
Always,
sir? Like,
always, yeah, that helps. Yes. It accelerates your process. See, in the end, I'll tell you, everybody learns at one stage or the other. I mean, you look at, for example, the person who went into a job at the age of 25 and the CEO and the startup who went at the age of 25, right? Even was the person who went into the job learned slowly, but 20 years down the line, he did learn. I mean, he now excels as a CEO, right? Same for the startup. He also is a CEO. The only thing is a good mentoring accelerates that process. That's otherwise everybody learns one way or the other. Once you get delved into it, you find ways to learn.
sir, sir, I've got a question in my mind, sir. Maybe it may seem to be a little bit childlike, but the thing is that these days, sir, with a number of online courses coming in, how much do you think are the traditional degrees, like you have BTech, you have MBA from different colleges, are relevant if you compare it with the online courses which have come up, right?
See, if you're talking about the academic learnings and their applications, believe me, I have a very broad view to. I mean, Okay, let me put it this way. Uh, I was an engineer, right? And I chose to move into a commercial world. So the engineering application gradually faded off, and I realized I was more a commercial man than a technical engineer. And this continued. Fortunately, in the corporate, I was growing fast. So I was pretty young when I was at a senior position. Now, this is my journey of life as well. A little bit of that. So I was in my early 30s, 30, 31, when I was a regional head of a 10,000 crore company. And they invest in people. And that's when I was sponsored into IIM Calcutta. I mean, it was a business leadership program which had many, many things. A part of it, a very large part of it also was a learning in IIM Calcutta. Now, interestingly, the kind of learning I've had in IIM Calcutta is very different, I see, from a graduate who's done his engineering and moves into IIM Calcutta. And my personal view has been that he sees it as a degree and as a document to get a job. Whereas what the learnings in IIM did for me was that it unlocked my mind in such a way that I could no longer do a job after that. I was in a job, right? And after I came back, I had an interview with my chairman. And my answer to him was, when he asked me, how do you feel about it? My answer to him was, I can't work. I mean, what is it that you would want me to work? As a vice president, perhaps, of an SBU head or vice president marketing? I've learned the skills of actually running the business sitting in your chair. You've shown me the very large canvas. I've seen a very large canvas of the business. How will I be able to do a small part of the business now? It's not possible. I need a larger canvas. It's something like शेर के मुंह को खून लग गया. And I was in a very cushioned job. I was in a very protective job, and I was doing pretty well. But that learning actually gave me confidence to resign, move out, and start your own business. That's when I started my own business startups in the engineering sector and in the hospitality sector as well. So I've had exposures as a restaurateur as well as and in the engineering manufacturing as well. But the learnings actually came from the academic, but that's not true for everyone. I've realized, people who move very early into business schools, they really cannot apply the learnings that are coming. Believe me, I have great value for business schools. They teach depth. Unfortunately, a student of 22, 23 is unable to comprehend that depth. But someone at your age, like let's say in the mid 30s and all, if they were to go to the business school, believe me, they'll extract a lot out of them. The kind of case studies that they come up with, the kind of learnings that come, and the applications. I moved out and I realized that I can do business, and then I might make very fewer mistakes. And the truth is, yes, we made very, very few mistakes in business. It's been a pretty steady growth for us now for what, like 15 years? Any questions now?
Right now, though, we don't have any questions, sir, because
Okay.
that's a very inspiring session, for all of us actually, and
I
whosoever
hope
will
so.
actually listen to that. Yeah. And guys, you should you ping me, if you are interested in the workshop which sir is gonna do organize. But yes, there are some criterias for that. Obviously, that has to be fulfilled if you want to attend that workshop. But you can also find Sanjay Saini sir on LinkedIn. So I've shared his profile in the YouTube description link, which is there. You can reach out to him for any guidance, and sir is more than eager to help us. Especially the younger
Absolutely.
generation, right? Sir is always there to help us. Sir, whenever I will call him, he will
I
always be
have,
there.
the startups that have worked with me, who have attended my workshops, often come to me and they meet me in Delhi, and we often sit down together in my office at home. We work together, and this relationship has continued over the years also. So you're welcome.
Sure, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you, and thank
Thank
you
you,
for
Rishi.
taking out time on Saturday
Any day,
at the evening,
anytime.
sir. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you, Rishi. Bye bye. Bye all.